Hello geographers, welcome to a series of lessons which have been recorded for you to help you complete your exam. These lessons run alongside a series of work booklets, and these will help you prepare for the questions that we might get. Some of the notes have been completed for you and diagrams included to help with your exam preparation. Where you're expected to make notes or complete a task, the area will be boxed off, and this will help you to know where you need to write. The headings in the booklets match the PowerPoint, so it's easy for you to know which pages match up, but I'll do my best to tell you what pages we're using anyway. The BBC Bitesize website is really useful. Remember, we're studying OCRB and also the CGP OCR revision guide. I should state that I don't own the rights to any of the images or any of the diagrams I've used in these presentations or in your work booklet. I've used QR codes throughout the presentations, which will take you to videos on YouTube. I've also tried to include the links as well. In this section, we are continuing to look about how the UK's population is changing. In this lesson, we will develop an understanding of the causes, effects, spatial distribution and responses to an ageing population. Turn to page 10, please, of your work booklet, UK Ageing Population. Today we're going to learn about the causes and consequences of an ageing population so that we understand how the UK government needs to respond, and we're going to be categorising the challenges and opportunities that an ageing population brings to the UK. This divided bar chart is on page 10 of your workbook. We're going to write a summary of what this divided bar chart shows. Along the x-axis, we've got years. You'll notice these haven't happened yet. These are predictions. Along the y-axis, we've got percentage. Our key shows that the red is 65 years old and more. The blue is under 16s and the yellow is everyone in between. In 2006, 19% of the UK's population was under 16. In 2031, this is predicted to decrease to 18%. In 2056, this is predicted to decrease to 17.3%, and in 2081, this is predicted to decrease to 16.7%. In 2006, the percentage of people over the age of 65 was 16%. In 2031, this is predicted to increase to 22.2%. In 2056, the number of people over 65 is predicted to increase to 25.1%. In 2081, this is expected to increase to 26.8%. So the number of people under the age of 16 is predicted to decrease, and the number of people over the age of 65 is predicted to increase. You'll also notice that the percentage of people in the working population is predicted to decrease from 65% in 2006 to 56.5% in 2081. Pause the presentation for a few minutes whilst you summarise what this graph shows. Scan the QR code, which takes you to a video about the true cost of ageing. If you cannot scan the QR code or it just isn't working for you, then in YouTube type in the true cost of ageing and it will take you to the video. At the bottom of page 10, you need to make notes about what this clip tells us about the impact an ageing population might have on a country. Turn to page 11 of your workbook, please. This choropleth map shows percentage of economically inactive, percentage of retired people. The darker colour shows a high percentage of retired people, and the lighter colour shows a lower percentage of retired people. First task is to describe the distribution of the higher concentrations of elderly people. So what I can say is that there are higher concentrations of elderly people along the coast. I can see the higher concentrations of the elderly along the south coast and counties in the southwest of England. I can see that there are high concentrations of elderly along the counties in the east of England. There are higher concentrations of elderly people around central Wales. Second task, I would like you to summarise why you think there is a high concentration of elderly people along the south coast. What might be enticing people to live in regions such as this? Third activity, how might high concentrations of elderly create challenge for local authorities? By local authorities, what I mean is local councils. Pause the presentation for a few minutes whilst you summarise the answers to those 3 tasks. So your answers should look something like this. So describe the distribution of the high concentrations of elderly people. So most elderly people are concentrated in coastal areas such as Norfolk and Dorset. Why do you think there is a high concentration along the south coast? Elderly might prefer to have a sea view. They might choose to live where they used to go on holiday. They might choose to live in parts of the UK where it's slightly warmer. How might high concentrations of elderly create challenges for local authorities? High percentages of elderly people create extra pressure on medical services. There would need to be extra transport provision, such as buses. There would need to be provision such as care homes, which would require extra staffing. Elderly people are more dependent members of society, which means that they don't pay tax, but they generally need lots of support. So local authorities don't get much income from having the elderly, but they have a lot to pay out. Pause the presentation for a few minutes and make sure your answers look something like mine. On page 12, you have a copy of this table. You are going to categorise the causes of an ageing population, the opportunities an ageing population creates, the challenges that an ageing population presents to the government, and finally you're going to categorise government responses. So what does the local council do in response to an ageing population? You're going to pause the presentation for a few minutes whilst you complete this task. You can colour code it or you can just create your own key. Okay, so you've had a chance to categorise the information on the table yourself. Check your answers against mine. There's obviously a lot more examples that you could give in the exam. These can be found on various revision websites such as BBC Bitesize or GCSE Pod. One of the causes of an increasing ageing population is that the UK has good healthcare. We have the NHS, which is free, which means that we have well-equipped hospitals, great medical services, and this helps the UK to increase its life expectancy. Some of the opportunities created by an increasing number of elderly is that it is very expensive to find childcare, so the elderly can look after grandchildren. Some businesses might make more profit as elderly people spend more money on holidays, leisure, in cafes and so on. This is known as the grey pound. There is an increased availability of willing part-time workers with flexible hours. Some of the challenges created by an increased number of elderly include a pressure on the government to provide pensions, fewer people of working age, so taxes have to be increased to pay for the NHS and pensions. With the elderly comes an increased cost of healthcare as more elderly people require medical treatments. All this has to be paid for by the government through our taxes. Some of the government's responses to an increased number of elderly people is to increase the retirement age to pay for pensions to 68. And there's also lots of incentives for construction companies to build more retirement complexes. So that encourages elderly people to move out of large family homes and into smaller apartments which are suited to their needs. These often provide minibuses taking them on supermarket trips. They're often provide services such as nurses and hairdressers and leisure facilities and things like that. Pause the presentation whilst you check your answers off. If there's anything you got wrong, just use this as an opportunity to correct it. Okay, we're at the end of this lesson now. So hopefully you have an understanding of the causes of an increasing ageing population. You understand some of the effects that an ageing population might have on a country such as the UK. You have a better understanding of the spatial distribution of people over age 65, so where the majority of people over 65 live, and you have a better understanding about how the government has responded to an ageing population.